Yeah, so let's start with a study that was done. Heavy cannabis use may increase risk of certain cancers, new study finds. So it says regular heavy marijuana use may increase a person's risk of developing some head and neck cancers. A study published Thursday in the JAMA Otolaryngology Head and Neck Surgery found.
Marge would have pronounced that perfectly, Margaret. Just letting you know.
Yeah, well, Marge is dead. So
Otolaryngology. Okay, yeah.
yeah,
I think
something to
that's
do
a
with
throat
the
doctor. Yeah,
yeah, that sounds about right. But the
yeah.
No
study
jokes here.
found that heavy cannabis users were between 3.5 and 5 times more likely to develop head and neck cancers than those who didn't use the drug regularly. Head and neck cancers are cancers of the mouth, throat, and nasal cavity and are twice as common in men than in women, according to the Center for Disease Control and Prevention. The research adds to a somewhat muddy body of evidence that's just beginning to explore the impact cannabis may have on cancer risk. The cannabinoids themselves could be carcinogenic, and it could be also that the smoke itself has potential for carcinogenesis, said lead study author Dr. Niels Kokot, a head and neck surgeon at Keck Medicine at the University of Southern California.
You know what's crazy about these studies? Like how they're always quick to be like, "Oh, look, cannabis causes cancer in the neck. Look."
Yeah.
But when we have like just any kind of brief evidence of like, "Oh, look, it helps with Parkinson's. Look, it helps with epilepsy." Like, no,
Remember
don't
that
look
neck
at
thing,
that.
though. Yeah, we
Yeah,
got that neck thing
yeah.
happening
You
over
gotta
there.
be
That's,
like,
that's anecdotal, isn't it? They
you
call
know,
it. That's the word they use.
you don't want to
Yeah.
have psychosis and neck cancer at the same time.
That's a terrible thing to be neck and
You
psychosis
know
at the same
what the
time.
fuck?
Oh, yeah,
There's so
that'll
much
ruin your day.
hypocrisy. Sorry, Margaret. You want to carry
No,
on?
that's okay. So the doctor and his team used 20 years of data from a global database, which included patient information from 64 health centers throughout the US. Of the more than 4 million people included, about 116,000 had been diagnosed with cannabis use disorder. Between April 2004 and April 2024, the
Damn.
diagnoses were based on self-reported use of the drug. In other words, the patient had to tell a healthcare provider how often they use cannabis and how it affected them. The research compared people with cannabis use disorder to those of a similar age and sex in the study without cannabis use disorder. The majority of the people with cannabis use disorder in the study were white. None had a history of head and neck cancer before the study began. The cannabis
What
users
does that mean? The study gave them neck cancer?
You could
Hmm.
perhaps draw that conclusion,
Good
Hmm.
way to
but
put it. Yeah, we need to talk to an attorney, don't we? Yes.
That's right.
the
Allegedly.
cannabis
Shenanigans.
users the cannabis users in the study were more likely to develop all types of head and neck cancer except hypopharyngeal cancer, a type
Nice.
of
I
lower
mean, not
throat.
nice. I mean, that's gonna,
Yeah.
well pronounced, Margaret.
Thank
Very
you.
nice.
Thank you. Which is a type of lower throat cancer compared with non-users. The most common types of head and neck cancer in both groups were oral cancers and cancer of the larynx. The study author noted that there were several limitations that could skew the study's findings. The first, that it's very difficult to measure how many people regularly use cannabis when relying on self-reported data. That's a very good point. To be in the group, people would have to have had told a healthcare provider during a visit that they used cannabis very frequently, the equivalent of smoking about a joint per day, said Dr. Joseph Califano, the director of the Gleiberman Head and Neck Cancer Center, who is not involved in the research. The same is true for alcohol and tobacco use. So they didn't really define what
Yeah, that's
a
a weird
heavy
thing to say there, isn't it? The same is true for
heavy
alcohol. You got like four fucking paragraphs telling you about how
Right.
weed is so terrible, and then be like, "Oh yeah, but alcohol and tobacco are the same." Anyway, back to cannabis.
Well, because it's like it's self-reported, right?
Oh,
So I mean, how
right.
are they defining a heavy cannabis user? Because one joint a day, is that considered a heavy cannabis user then,
Well,
according
and
to
they're
this
not even
study?
breaking your cannabis use down into various categories here. They're just basically saying cannabis use. Are we talking about vapor? Are we talking about whole flower vapor, prepared vapor? Are we talking about smoke? Are we talking about bong rips, dabs? What are we doing here? Doesn't say anything
Mm-hmm.
like that.
Yeah, because it did say perhaps this cannabis smoke earlier could be carcinogenic.
Right.
That's
But
typically
all
to do
smoke
if for
is
combustion.
carcinogenic, right?
Do any
Yeah.
of
To a
them
degree, I
smoke?
would have to
Yeah.
say, yeah.
Do they smoke cigars or cigarettes or like?
Yeah.
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 Do they
Good
drink
causation.
alcohol?
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's just
So
causation to correlation. That's a good
the
thing.
study also looked at head and neck cancer diagnoses at 2 points in time within the first year of being diagnosed with cannabis use disorder and 5 years or beyond the diagnosis. It excluded, however, cancers found 1 to 4 years after a cannabis use disorder diagnosis. The secondary analysis was used to determine how strong the association was. If it remained after 5 years, it's more likely the association was strong. They found after 5 or more years, the cannabis use disorder group still had higher overall rates of head and neck cancer, but there was no longer a significantly increased risk for some specific types, including oral, laryngeal, and oropharyngeal cancer. So I don't know what that really tells us.
Hmm.
Honestly.
Well,
And like
it's
they talk about cannabis, like heavy cannabis users, and then they get into this cannabis use disorder, which they don't really define.
it definitely sounds like a clickbaity article trying to convince you not to use weed, is what I'm saying here. But
Yeah.
it like I said, it really doesn't break anything down scientifically. It just says we found that people who self-reported are doing this. Doesn't mean anything because you haven't told me anything about how they're using it, how often they're using it. I don't know.
It's
It's
just
really
not a
weird.
proper study, is it? You know,
Yeah,
No, it's not.
There's loads of questions.
Yeah.
Like, did any of them live in a high pollution area? Like, do they live in cities or
do they have dogs? Do they have cats? What is their occupation? You know, there's so many questions that need to be put into into studies like this to make sure that everything is covered. You can't just jump to conclusions and say, "Yo, look, this must be because of the cannabis." It's ridiculous.
And and again, do these people use cannabis because they're in a high risk category in other areas in their life and in other high risk areas causing them the problems and not the cannabis? We really don't know. There's so many things here. This
So
is
they
just
do say later in the article there are biological reasons why someone would hypothesize that cannabis smoke could be harmful, but we're not sure what the degree of risk is, if there is one, with head and neck cancer, he said, noting that it's difficult to tease out the risk factors such as alcohol and tobacco use, like you guys said earlier. About 20% of the people in the study with cannabis use disorder reported frequent tobacco and alcohol use, compared with about 2% of the group without cannabis use disorder. Keeping in mind, edible cannabis may be safer than smoking the plant, Hannah said, acknowledging some of his patients use medical marijuana for health conditions. Califano said there's no reason to suspect some cannabinoids themselves, rather than the smoke, might be behind the increased cancer risk if future research establishes a clear connection. He said there's reason to suspect.
Yeah, well,
I
it says
find
it all there,
that-
though, doesn't it? That more people like who didn't use, well, who used like alcohol and cigarettes had cancer than the ones that didn't in the same in
Yeah.
that study. Yeah, so that correlation is in that alcohol and cigarettes puts that percentage up as well, probably more so.
Especially the tobacco.
Yeah,
Tobacco is
exactly.
obviously known for causing all kinds of cancers.
Especially throat and
Yeah.
mouth
Yeah.
cancers, especially
Yeah,
them two.
the
Yeah,
head and neck cancers they're talking about.
yeah, yeah. It's like fucking bullshit.
And like you said, Monkey, they didn't really like tease out the different ways people were consuming, because obviously if you're consuming it all in edible form, that's one thing, or if you're vaporizing, bong rips, like all those things can certainly change
Exactly.
the result in impact. So
Damn.
they're looking for problems where there are none. People,
Yeah,
Pagan says, to quote Bill Hicks, non-smokers die too. You know what I mean? So you know,
yeah, exactly. Yeah, man.
if
Do you want to not smoke cannabis and be a right miserable old cunt for 50 years, or do you want to smoke cannabis and be right happy bastard for 45 years? There you
Yeah.
right?
go.
Because if it's not that, it'll be the, I don't know.
Yeah. If not, you're going to get run
Shit in the
over by a
water.
bus or stabbed by some dude.
And let's
going for a
face it,
pint
you
in
know,
it. So,
them years ain't the best years either. You know, you can't walk right, bad back.
Yeah.
You know.
you're going to be
I don't know,
dribbling
speak for
everywhere
yourself,
and not in a good way.
I celebrated my dad's 93rd birthday last
Right.
weekend, and
Oh,
he's
That's
doing
awesome.
pretty.
And he
he's
don't
doing
smoke,
pretty
does he?
fucking good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
No,
but I
he
bet
used
he
to,
ate
but he
decent
quit.
food and he's not ate processed food for most of his fucking life, like everyone
No,
else.
that's not true either.
There you go.
You never know, man. It's just one thing for one person and one thing for the other person.
That's
just the way
right.
It is.
Just try and
I'll
enjoy the
take-
ride. Also from Bill Hicks. Yeah.
Yeah, I'll take Marge's article and I'll file it under good to know. but I
Margaret's
need more
article.
There
Margaret.
you go. I got it.
I'll
Bingo,
file
you
it
got
under
me on that one.
recycle
But I
bin.
will take Margaret's article and file it with good to know. Need a little bit more information on this one, you know?
Yeah, man.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's good that they're studying this stuff, but it looks like they are looking like trying to say cannabinoids are powerful and they can have
They
these
are.
negative effects, which
Hmm.
I don't know. We've been consuming cannabis for a few millennia,
Yeah.
Exactly. Well,
and
at least a
it's
few millennia that we know of, right?
Yeah.
right.
Hundreds of thousands
Yeah.
of years, man. No doubt.
And when you have an endocannabinoid system, it suggests that I don't know. It's
They,
you're looking
uh,
for problems with there are none.
Carcinogenic, yeah, it
Yeah.
does suggest
Yeah.
that, doesn't it?
All we can say is we are not scientists. We do not know, but these people should be putting proper studies on to bring us proper answers that we can think are reliable. But they're not doing that. They're just giving us clickbaity shit like this. Do better.
Exactly.
Do
pretty,
better.
pretty clickbaity, that's for sure.
Mhm. But still good. It's a good one to discuss. I like it. But, and of course, we made light of a lot of things in there, you know, laughing and joking and stuff. But cancer is a serious fucking problem, man. And we don't mean to make jokes of it and stuff. We do sympathize with anybody who suffers with such conditions, man. And we hope you all the best. We don't mean to make jokes, but I don't know. We'd like to laugh too. You have to laugh, right? That's how it is.
Dude, if you
Yeah,
don't
you
laugh,
sure
you'll
do.
end up crying. So what the heck,
In this
you know?
economy, that's all your only option.
For sure. There's some enjoyment you can get for free. Just laugh at
Yeah.
yourself for a little bit.
Yeah.
There we go.
Yeah, if we all laughed at ourselves a little bit, the world would be a better place.
If you have enjoyed this video, please don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll catch you for the full show on Sundays on youtube.com/high on homegrown. Thanks for watching.